Shalom, and welcome to Parsha Highlights and Insights. This is Rabbi Fischer. This week's Parsha is Toledot, Toledot Yitzchak ben Abraham, the generations of Yitzchak. The Parasha is divided into three parts. The first part tells about the birth and the early life of the twins Yaakov and Esav. Yitzchak was 40 years old when he married Rivka, but for a long time they are childless. They pray very intensely until Rivka conceives, and she feels an intense struggle within her, and so she goes to seek an explanation from Hashem as to what is happening, and she is told a prophecy that there are two struggling nations within her. When the time comes, she gives birth to twins. First, Esav, who is called this way because when he is born, he is hairy and looks like he is an adult already. And Esav means made or finished. His brother comes out. This is Yaakov. Yaakov is holding onto the heel of his brother Esav. The word for heel is Akev, so Yaakov comes from Akev, heel. As they grow up, Esav becomes a hunter. Yaakov is the simple man in tents. It means he's a shepherd. It also means he learns Torah. As they grow older, it seems that Yitzchak prefers Esav, while Rivka prefers Yaakov. There's an incident in which Yaakov is cooking a lentil stew, and Esav comes in from the field, and he's exhausted, and he is willing to sell his birthright, which Chazal explain is the right to be the Kohen in the Beit HaMikdash, in the sanctuary, for some of that lentil stew. And so Esav sells the right of the firstborn to Yaakov, and Esav clearly has no real regard for this firstborn right. The second part of the parasha is Yitzchak in the land of the Philistines, in the land of the Plishtim. There is a famine, not the same famine as was in the time of Abraham, but a famine. And Hashem tells Yitzchak, remain in this place called Gerar and settle it. In other words, don't go down to Egypt, which might be a place to escape the famine. Instead, stay in Gerar, settle it. Hashem assures Yitzchak that this land too will be given to him and to his descendants. And Hashem says that he will bless Yitzchak the way he blessed Abraham, who was so obedient to Hashem. When Yitzchak is there, he says that Rivka is his sister, but unlike what happened with Abraham and Sarah in the previous generation, the Plishtim do not bother Rivka at all. And after a while, Yitzchak and Rivka let down their guard, and Avimelech realizes that they are not brother and sister, but rather husband and wife. And Avimelech accuses Yitzchak, why did you do this to me? This almost led to a terrible sin. And Yitzchak simply states that he was afraid for his life. And so Avimelech says to his people, do not molest this man and his wife, but Yitzchak and Rivka must leave the immediate area. And so they withdraw into the valley, and Yitzchak plants, and he is very successful. And as he is successful, the Plishtim are jealous of his success. And so what they do is they stop up the wells. They stopped up the wells that Abraham had dug in his generation, but in the intervening years, they stopped them up and filled them with water. Avimelech says you have to move away, and so Yitzchak moves farther away, and Yitzchak redigs the same wells that Abraham had dug, and in this way he asserts his control, his ownership, and his rights to those wells. There are further disputes over new wells. Yitzchak moves farther from Gerar and closer towards Beersheba. He digs a well, and the local people argue with him over that. And Yitzchak calls it Asek, which is contention. And then he digs another well, and they argue with him over that, and that's called Sitna, which means hatred. And then finally a third well, and they do not bother him over that, and so he calls it Rehovot, wide open spaces, in other words, no longer being bothered. And Hashem appears to Yitzchak and assures him once again that this land will belong to him, and Yitzchak builds an altar. His servants discover another well, but before they have a chance to tell Yitzchak about it, Avimelech and his entourage, including Pichol, his general, come. They want to make a covenant with Yitzchak because they realize that Yitzchak is blessed. They certainly do not want to run afoul of Yitzchak's God. And so they make this covenant and they celebrate with a feast, and Avimelech and his entourage depart. The well is then told to Yitzchak, and Yitzchak calls it Shiv'ah, which means both 7, and oath, because they made an oath there. The final part of the Parsha, the longest part of the Parsha, is the struggle over the blessing of Yitzchak. First, Esav marries when he is 40 years old, but he marries 2 Hittite women, in other words, idolaters, and this causes great distress to Yitzchak and to Rivka. Yitzchak decides he wants to bless Esav, and so he tells Esav to prepare game for him because Yitzchak likes to eat game, and he says, then I will bless you. Rivka overhears this, and she instructs Yaakov to disguise himself as Esav. Yaakov does this reluctantly, and Yitzchak blesses Yaakov, thinking he is Esav. Yitzchak's eyesight is failing, and so the only way he can determine who he's talking to is by touching his hands, and they feel hairy because Rivka has placed the skin from the goat that she prepared, and she prepared it in such a way that it tastes just like game. She places that on those smooth areas of Yaakov, which Yitzchak touches and thinks he is touching Esav. And so he blesses the one he thinks is Esav, but is actually Yaakov. Esav then returns, and the deception is very soon discovered, and Esav is devastated, and he cries. Yitzchak does give Esav a blessing, but Esav is not assured, and he vows that he will kill Yaakov when he has the opportunity. Rivka says to Yaakov, you must now go to live with my brother Lavan. This way you will be safe from your brother. I will send for you when the time comes. Rivka says to Yitzchak, Yaakov is still unmarried, and if he too marries some of the local Hittite women, I do not want to live. And so this suggests to Yitzchak that he should send Yaakov away. So Yaakov is going to go both because Rivka says he should be safe from Esav, and also in order to find a wife. And that's so Yitzchak says to Yaakov, go to your uncle Lavan, your mother's brother, live with him and find a wife from among his daughters. May Hashem bless you. And it's at that point that he gives Yaakov the blessings of Abraham, the blessings that Hashem had given Abraham about creating the nation and giving the land to that nation. Yaakov departs for Lavan's home, and when Esav sees just how much it upsets his parents that he has married the Hittite women, he chooses two wives from among Yishmael's daughters, and that would be more satisfactory. The problem is that he does not divorce the Hittite women. And that brings us to the end of the parasha with Esav marrying again and Yaakov on his way to live with his uncle Lavan. So that will be continued next week. In that section of the parasha where Yitzchak digs the various wells, the new wells, and as I said, one well is called Esek, contention, one is called Sitna, hostility, and the third one, over which there's no contention, is called Rehovot, expanses. The Ramban raises the fundamental question: what does the Torah go to such lengths to tell about the matter of the wells, even though this story does not seem to serve any particular purpose, doesn't give any great honor to Yitzchak. And it is because of this that yet the Ramban says that, in fact, this whole episode is included in the Torah in order to teach us a very important hidden message, namely that the wells are a symbol of the temple that will be built in the future by the descendants of Yitzchak. The first well is called Esek, and that is like the first temple because there was contention from our enemies about that first temple until they actually destroyed it. That's the Babylonians. The second is called Sitna, hostility, animosity, which is even harsher. And that alludes to the fact that the second temple is actually created in an atmosphere of hostility. That's the very word that's used. It's recorded in the book of Ezra that during the reign of Achashverosh, at the beginning of the reign, some of the local people, not the Jews, wrote letters to Achashverosh, and they wrote an accusation. And here the word sitna is used against those who dwell in Judah and Jerusalem in order to stop the building of the second Beit HaMikdash. And so throughout the over 400 years that the second Beit HaMikdash was in existence, there was hostility and animosity. The third well is called Rehovot, which is an allusion to the future Beit HaMikdash, which will be built in the time of Mashiach. It will be built, says the Ramban, without conflict, without dispute. God will expand our borders, so Rehovot is expanses. And this third Beit HaMikdash is discussed at some length in the book of Yechezkel, who also talks about how the third Beit HaMikdash would be built and the land would be expanded. So the reason why these wells are included in the text of the Torah is to serve as a hint to future events, as the Ramban often says, Ma'aseh Avot Siman Lebanim, the incidents of the forefathers is a sign, is an allusion for their descendants. And in that way, we see future history already in these events. I thank you for joining me for the discussion of Parashat Toledot. This has been Rabbi Abraham Fischer for Parasha Highlights and Insights, saying Shalom.